God blimey, I've been watching Belgravia, a real posh, about the upper middle class, the upper class in London, and God blimey, they weren't half posh. Anyway, back to my story. Yeah, Undine the Mermaid, this is about. In Sydney's Elizabeth Street, on the roof of a golfing store near Central Railway, a neon sign showed a golfer chipping a ball into a hole. 20 paces north was Binky's Burger Bar, an all-night cafe that was very cheap. Near a grimy counter, plastic tables and chairs were scattered in the open air. It had no roof. This was a little cafe building with open air chairs and tables. I sat and spent the last of my money on a buttered finger bun with pink icing. A slightly inebriated dame, aged about 40, walked in. Hard living showed on her face, and if she was hustling, I didn't want to waste her time, so I ignored her. But she sat at my table. I gave her my gap-toothed smile because I had 2 teeth missing in the front. You know, they fell in the river at Murray Bridge. And in an Aussie accent, she asked, "What you so happy about?" Her clothes were dowdy, but she carried a purse. And I wondered where I should run if I got a chance to snatch it. Across the road there was a pub, and I thought, oh, those people in the pub might chase me if I do that. So I said, "I'm just happy to see a classy dame like you come into the joint." And she said, "Don't bullshit me, sweetie. Life's too short. What you doing out at night without your mummy?" "Some lucky Colleen will take me poverty still." I said, "Some lucky Colleen will take me poverty-stricken self home and appreciate me good lovin' soon enough, I'm sure, me darling girl." That got her to smile. She introduced herself. "I'm Undine. I was a mermaid in the sea, but me bloody husband caught me one night when he was out fishing on Sydney Harbour. You see this scar on me stomach? That's where the bugger hooked me. You can meet my daughters. We got a lovely house. You could stay with us if my daughters like you. They go to university. But Julie, she needs a boyfriend to keep her out of trouble. Have you got a girlfriend?" I said I hadn't. "Want to come home and meet me daughters?" I sure did. Undine hailed a cab and gave an address in Redfern, which was a pretty low market area. When we got to what she said was her place, she paid the driver but was slightly short of the fare. The driver seemed to know her and didn't make a fuss. He drove off, and Undine took my arm and walked me to a park bench. "Can't go in yet," she said. "Wait till me husband leaves." She put her arm through mine and snuggled up. It was a balmy summer night, and I was happy to be with her. I said to her, "If he comes out, I'm not fighting him for you." And she said, "I can handle the prick. I'll go and have a look." And she disappeared down an alley, and I waited vulnerable in case a police car noticed me hanging round like a burglar. 10 minutes later she returned with a bottle of wine. We drank some and then snuggled up on the bench, and forgetting about the 2 daughters bullshit, I fell asleep. Sunlight woke me up next morning. Undine said, "Come on, we're going to the early opener pub. I need drinking money." We walked to Belmore Park near Central Railway, where Undine searched among half a dozen winos, sleeping under newspapers and hidden in clumps of bushes. Drinking bums had to hide in those days or be charged with drunken disorderly. They'd go in the drunk tank for 4 hours and have to pay a 30-shilling fine. If they couldn't pay, they could get jailed for a few months. depending on the judge. Undine found a tough-looking bloke, about 30, who seemed glad that she'd found him. The three of us walked down Broadway through the 8 a.m. pedestrians. Undine communicated well and kept telling the pedestrians, "Fuck off, you bloody pricks." A pair of classy, well-dressed ladies waiting at traffic lights glanced at us, and Undine said, "Put your eyes back in your head, you snooty bitches." The ladies shit themselves, and cars screeched to a halt as we crossed over the road against the lights. The tough guy and I wanted to wait for the traffic lights, but Undine dragged us over, and she sang, fuck 'em all, the long and the short and the tall." She led us into the ladies' parlour of an early opener pub, where a dozen shabbily dressed people sat at 4 tables. Everybody fussed over Undine and teased me with sexual innuendo. Undine gave me a 10-shilling note. "Take this, lover boy, and go get us some brown muskets." Drinks cost less in the public bar, so I went in there and I returned with change. I didn't slip any into my pocket, because if Undine yelled thief, I might, like Liz Taylor's brother in Suddenly Last Summer, be ripped apart by the mob. I was very hungry, but I didn't ask for eating money, as it seemed that this lot did not bother with food. A couple of people asked her for money. "Spare us a couple of bob, love?" And Undine often gave them some. But she would also say, "Fuck off, you bludger," to the ones that she didn't like. The conversation was informative. An old lady said, "Geez, Undine, poor old Jimmy Oneball fell down the stairs at the railway and got took to hospital." And Undine said, "That dirty prick pinched a quid out of me handbag at the Bunch of Cunts. I'll rip his other ball out if I see him." A wine bar in Sussex Street known as the Bunch of Cunts was originally called the Bunch of Grapes, but since it became the haunt of the psychotic winos, it was now called the Bunch of Cunts. A man with a cough walked over and he said, "I reached over the bar and put a bottle of plonk down me pants at the Buncher. They called the Wallopers. I got lumbered, but the judge laughed and gave me 4 hours." And Undine said, "Fuck the Buncher. They're a mob of ratbag gigs." A man with a cough said, "I got to get to the TB hospital. Lend us the fare, love." And an old lady said, "Piss off, you bloody bullshit artist. Don't bother poor Undine." And a man with a cough said, "Eat crabs and die, you fucking old spider." Enthralled by this honesty, I felt privileged to be allowed to listen, and was soon pissed as a fart. Undine would run out of money, go outside, and reappear 20 minutes later with dough. This was years before automatic telemachines, and I wondered how she got it. The unaccustomed booze had me woozy. On my knees, I threw up in the dirty dunny. The joint sure had atmosphere. When I came back, the crowd was cheering as Undine traded punches with a woman. The barman struggled to get the pair out the door, and Undine yelled obscenities, then washed the blood off in a park. I was afraid the cops would arrive, and I was about to leave, but she hailed a cab and grabbed me and pulled me in and dumped us near a Woolloomooloo building site. When the cab driver heard that she had not enough money. Undine grabbed my wrist and led me through a gap in the fence and drew me down onto a pile of sand and gravel. "Give me a good fuck," she ordered. So I pretended she was Bridget Bardot in the movie God Created Woman, but I really couldn't get it up. Stones hurt my knees. Undine's breath was lousy. That's my excuse anyway. And she was displeased at my lack of stiff. "Don't you think I'm sexy enough, you little puff?" I searched for placating words. She'd eventually have more money, and I didn't want to lose her until I had some of it. Next door was a factory. I looked up and I saw first floor windows. Workers were watching us. I said, "Some gigs are up there watching us, Dale. Let's split before they call the cops." Undine arose sedately, with ladylike motions, arranged her skirt, slowly bent over, grabbed the hem, pulled it up and flashed her bare bum at him. I dragged her towards William Street, where she pulled me into every cheap wine bar to check for pals. William Street back then was like the Bowery in New York. It was full of grungy little wine bars. Because pubs were normal in Sydney, but wine bars were where the cheap drinkers went. And she'd be welcomed in those bars and be shouted brown muskets. All the bums seemed to love to drink brown musket. I guess it was the cheapest drink. Every battler and good old gal had news to tell her. Then she'd disappear out the door and Undine would come back later with money. I watched her as she grogged on, and then at 6 p.m. we walked through some back alleys to a cheap hotel on Elizabeth Street near Binky's Burger Bar. Undine gave me a couple of quid to hire a room, and she said, "Get us a single room. I'm barred from in there, so you get the key and I'll sneak up the back stairs." We went to sleep in our clothes. In the single bed, her snores were like wails from hell, but I was too tired to care. About 3 a.m, police sirens woke us up and we snuck along deserted corridors to the toilet, then went back to our sardine bed. Undine took off her dress and worked on my cock. It was the first time I'd really done it. She put her legs up and over my shoulders to fuck. I'd never imagined it could be done like that. I came fairly quickly, but Undine seemed content with a short ram, and I felt elated. I was no longer a shameful virgin. At sunup, we awoke, and instead of going out to the dunny, we pissed in the sink. And she jumped on me again, and she said, "This time I'll ride you with a tight rein to make you a stayer." "All right, I'll finish the rest tomorrow."